know all about it. It's not anything new we point to. You'll find it goes back to thousands of years.
Take it yourself.
They've been pointing out the same old thing. And then many recognise it. And it's very simple. There's nothing simpler than one. And it's not even one. It's the absolute, the one essence, the one intelligence energy that vibrates patterns and expresses as everything. And the great mantra is that you've all heard before and know, is I am that. I am already that, they're pointing to. That is all there is. There is only that. And you all know that. Because you say, that's the chair I'm sitting in, that's the room I'm in, that's the space in the room. That's the tree, that's the flower, that's the bird. Everything is already that which we discriminate with the words. The names we put on. Names and the forms. And that's what they call it in the text. Satchidananda Nama Rupa. That's Advaita. Advaita translated means non-duality. One without a second, not two. In other words, what they're saying is only that. Break that Satchidananda down. Sat is existence. Chit is consciousness. Ananda is loving to be. Anyone who is not existing right now, and you know that you are, you'll say, oh, I am. Anyone who is unaware, no, you realise you're conscious, I'm conscious and I'm aware. Anyone not happy to be, well, none of you want to be dead right now, so you'd rather be than not be. So, points out again that you must and can only be that which they're pointing to. But what's the problem? We've learnt words and taking on the belief that we are these body minds, these persons, these separate entities. And you look around the room and you see what appears to be separation. Separate entity. Get on your collar. But though it appears to be separate, it is still only the one essence. And there appears to be many, still only the one. Can you postulate or think of anything that's outside of this space you are in right now? They call it space-like awareness. That's one of the labels they put on. Postulate or think of anything that could be outside of space. What would it be in? And you realise it would have to be and can't be anything other than space. Space is empty. Can you find a centre to it? Can you find a beginning to it? Or an end to it? If there's no centre, no circumference, no beginning, it hasn't got any shape, hasn't got any form. And can you postulate or think of anything at all that could be outside of space? What would it be in? When you investigate and you'll see if space is all there is and there's nothing separate and apart from it. You must be that space that's vibrating and patterning into shapes and forms that appear separate and apart from it. So that is what everything that appears in space is only space. We've taken ourselves to be this person, this body, mind entity. Are you the body? Well, innately you know you're not the body because you say my body. Just the same as you say my house, my car, my coat. You know you're not the house, the car or the coat. Maybe you're not the body either. What about my mind? Show me a thing called mind if you can. When I investigate, I can't find anything at all that is mind. It's concepts, ideas and images that we call mind. But there is really no substantial thing that you can say this is mind, apart from thought, or word, or sound, which is all vibration. Just the same as the body, made up of elements. Air, earth, fire, water, space. All elements. Take the air out of your body. See how long it'd last. Take the fire, the body temperature. Soon get hypothermia and die. Take the water, your body's 60% water. Get off the earth if you can. Get out of space if you can. You can't. Now space has no centre, no circumference. It is no thing. And everything is the content of space. So if space is no thing, can the content that appears to be something, can it be anything other than the no thing also? So all these patterns, shapes and forms that you see around you and everywhere are really no thing, appearing as something. And they call it in Hinduism a phenomenal manifestation. And all this phenomena, you, me and everything else, is phenomenal. And the definition of phenomena is that which appears to be. So it's seemingly solid and substantial. It's all appearance. It's all vibrating. And it's all transient. You think that body's a static thing right now, it's something real? But even in this moment, that body that you walked into the room with is not the same body that you walked into the room with. There are thousands of cells dying right at this moment and being replaced. And each cell knows exactly what to do. It's suffused with that, what I call from intelligence energy, or life. Or, if you like, you can call it God. Or whatever label you put on it, it's still only a label, a word. It tells you in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. That's when it all begins. The Word was with God, because that's all that God is a word. The Word was God. All things were made by Him, by the Word, and isn't that true? We put labels or words on everything, and there's nothing made but what was made without the Word. So that's our problem. How many words were you born with? Can anyone remember your birth? When you look at that, you realise you can't remember your birth. You don't remember anything till you're about 2.5 years old, and the capacity of reading develops. So the beginning didn't happen till then. Seemingly happening and occurring. All words. Now have a look at the word. Is the word the thing? Me is a word. And what's this me? Am I a word? And you realise that life as appearing, expressing in, is prior to the word, because you didn't have any words for the first couple of years of your life. But you were living then, and knowing and being, but you didn't have any words. When the capacity of reasoning developed in you at about 2.5, you learnt words from your parents who had learnt words. And they put names on you. Your little Billy, or your little Jane, or your little Johnny. And you learnt words like I am. Now, instead of recognising, or they didn't tell you that you were the absolute, you were told you were little Johnny, and you believed in little Johnny. What was little Johnny? This boy, or girl, whatever you might be, in this human pattern, shapes and forms. And we didn't know anything about that until you learnt words, human, and patterns and forms. But you were living for the first couple of years of your life without words. Doesn't that point out that you are prior to word, prior to thought? All words are concepts, ideas and images, what we call mind. If that's all that mind is word, and you've got yourself, given yourself a particular name, you take that particular name to be the word, to be what you are. But we've got names and forms on everything. Everything have different names. And you recognise the word is not real. Take the word water, try and drink it. Try and swim in it or drown in it. Take the word fire, cook with it, burn yourself. So looking at this word I or me in the same fashion, you'll see it's not what you actually are. But can anyone negate your beingness? Each and every one knows I am. Try and negate it. You can't say I am not. You can say it, all right. And I am represents that pattern, shape and form that you believe yourself to be. The being under this pattern. And that's another way of putting Sat Chit and Andrews. Being, knowing and loving to be. Now you call yourself a human being. You put the label on it to discriminate it. Human being. This body mind is a human being. Put that label on it, and you call yourself, or there's a greater power that's pulling the strings in this universe, running the show. It's far greater than I am. Called a Supreme Being. So we believe we are these human forms, and there is this higher power or greater being, which we call God, which you just pointed out is only another label, but there, pattern, shapes and forms and expresses through all these different labels. Take away that word human and take away that word supreme. Try and negate your beingness right now. You're still being, aren't you? You can't say, I am not. If you can't, you can say it, but you know in saying it there's something there enabling you to say it. So, you are being. Pure being. Not with any concepts, labels, or ideas or images attached to it, which divide it and separate it. And you can't not be, because it's happening right now spontaneously. But it's not becoming. We think if we learn this or do this or meditate on this or pray to this, we will become enlightened and up equal with that higher being, the greater being, which we call God. But we're all separated by the seeming word. And when they say, the ancients that were investigated tell you are that already, and you know for certain that I am that, what's the thatness? The thatness is the absolute. You can't add anything to the absolute. It's absolute, total. You can't take anything away from it. Can't be divided, can't be separated. But what do? We put this term human on ourselves and we separate that self from the absolute. Well, they call it the great perfection in Buddhism, which is the same as the absolute. You can't add anything to the perfect. You can't take anything away from the perfect. And they give it to you in one sentence there. The great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. There's nobody who is not being right now, who is not unaware. You are aware and you are being. But we've got all these concepts, ideas and images coming up, which are constantly separated. And in that separation is isolation, loneliness, separation, division. And so because of that, when we're isolated and separated, there's fear, there's anger, there's unhappiness, there's danger. We're not sure of what everything is then. But they say it's absolute. If you recognise you are the absolute, and you can't go around telling people you are the absolute, they'll put you in a nut house. But you know it yourself, and you'll see everything around you as that absolute. What can you add to the absolute? Can you say, if you recognise you are the absolute, can you say there's something superior to me? Or something inferior to me? Well, if it's absolute, it's the one totality. There can't be. Is it good or is it bad? Or is it pleasant? No, it's already that. That they're talking about is the chair. That is the carpet. That's the room. That's the person. That's you. That's me. Everything is that which we put labels on. The one without a second, not two, which they point out. That's what non-duality is. Absolute. One without a second, not two. Duality is two. Me and the other. And me and the other is relationship. It's relative. One is relative to the other. Relationship is duality. And we're talking about non-duality here. Pointing out that duality is an erroneous belief. It's a fiction. It's an idea that people took on years ago when they learnt words. And those that haven't looked into it and understood it, when more life comes on than the little children and that, put labels and words on and take them to be separate. And that's what we learn in schools, and that's where we learn more words. All words, concepts, ideas, images, that's all the word. Well, look in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, you see the face of the mirror. What do you see? An image. Because go up to the mirror and try and pull your image out of the mirror. You can't. Because it's not there. It only appears to be there. The mirror can't say it's not there because it appears to be, but you can't say it is there because trying to grab it, you can't grab anything. So you get an idea what all this manifestation is then. It's not how it appears to be, a phenomenal manifestation. And that's the definition of phenomenon, that which appears to be. It's appearing to be, we've taken the appearance to be real and added all these concepts to this idea of I or me. I am Bob, the Australian, I'm a good fella, or I'm not so good fella, or I'm unhappy, I've got crooked legs, or a bad heart, or fearful, or I'm anxious. Whatever's going on, put labels on, and look at the conceptual image that's there then, when all these labels go on. You've got this conceptual, an image made up of concepts, we take it to be real. But the Buddhists give it in one sentence, they call it the great perfection. You can't add anything to the perfect, like the absolute. You can't take anything away from it. As I say, if you know that you are the absolute, you can't. There can be nobody superior to you, nobody inferior to you, and what would you want of the other persons? Nothing. So you see, it's going to take a lot of the hassle out of this functioning world. If we take away this isolation and separation and know the truth, it's the one without the second, and recognise that everything is that, what are you going to be fearful or anxious or unhappy about? So we can take away a lot of the hassle that's going on in the world in that recognition that it has done here. Taken away. Where before there was a lot of sadness, a lot of unhappiness, a lot of anger, jealousy, envy, all sorts of conceptual imaging was going on, coming up in the mind, the sensations, the feelings coming up in the mind, and it stirred up the body, sensations and fears, and it seemed real. With that stirring up all the concepts and images in the body, a little bit of investigation and recognising that it is only that, just as it is, not as we think it is, or not as we'd like it to be, but just as it is right now. And isness is not what was, it's not what will be, and it's constantly ising right in this presence awareness. It's not static, it's not it's transient like this body is. It's not static, it's transient. It's changing all the time. What's your next thought going to be? You don't know. A thought will come up and you say, I think. You don't know what it is, but it's come up now, you claim it as I think. What have you done? You formed a subject. This me, has become the thinker, a subject. That's thinking this thought, which might be fear and it's become the object. So that's the division. Subject-object thinking is the cause of all our problems. It's only me that can be unhappy. It's only me that can be anxious or jealous or envious or guilty. So me is the cause, the believed in me is the cause of all this psychological suffering. And the effects are the cause of the cause is the fear, the anger, the depression, the guilt, the unhappiness. So me is the cause of all my psychological suffering. So that's all that it is, cause and effect. Can there be a cause, if I ask myself the sort of question, can there be an effect if I'm not relating to the cause? And I realise the cause is me, this conceptual image. When I put all these words and concepts onto and form the believing person. When you look into the ancient language, the word person comes from ancient Latin, persona, the mask. We've got a conceptual image or a mask, which we take to be real. So if me is the cause, and I see the me as a fiction, can there be an effect without a cause? Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's the way out. If you're not relating to a cause, where can the effect lodge? It must be seen for what it is. Another vibrating pattern, shape and form, which left as it is will move on. But we don't leave these things as is. We keep regurgitating them, bringing them up, adding to them a story, another story, and keep it going. When you see left as it is spontaneous. Spontaneity means it's got no beginning, no ending. It's just like a pulse or a throb, which, but when we're thinking about it, it's got duration. It goes into time. We begin to think, we carry the thought on, and this concept of time becomes seemingly real. But they point that out and say it's non-conceptual, ever fresh or spontaneous, presence awareness. Just this, nothing else. Who is that describing? Don't you recognise it? This is what I am, without any concepts, without getting locked into the word. I am ever fresh presence awareness without the concept. That's the freedom. Freedom for all the conceptualising, the thinking, the unhappiness, the depression. The cause is seen as a fiction. So we see it's all causeless. It's just a spontaneous vibration that seemingly patterns into shapes and forms. The Buddha called it a cognising emptiness. It's empty. As I said before, all these pattern shapes and forms appearing in space, they are nothing but space, because something could not come from nothing. A cognising emptiness. Another word for cognising is knowing or awareing. You're knowing, you're cognising this emptiness. But then you're seeing the forms take place in the room. And he said it's a cognising emptiness, but he said emptiness is form. It is that cognising emptiness that's vibrating, and in that vibration it seemingly vibrates intelligently into pattern shapes and forms. It's not just a scary thing, a movement. It patterns into all these shapes and forms. He made the statement that emptiness is form. So these forms, you, me and everything else, are empty. Well, he turned it around the other way and said, the forms can be nothing other than the emptiness. And we like to believe ourselves these human patterns and not recognise your true nature is the absolute that's appearing seemingly in this body, mind, pattern, shape and form, which is only an appearance. It's not the real. It only seems to be so. But even though it seems to be so, it's all the reality. You go to sleep at night and a dream starts. In that dream, you'll see yourself taking shape as that body and doing all sorts of things in the dream, seemingly solid and substantial. You can be on a train, in the air, on the sea, in a shopping mall, anywhere at all, doing all sorts of things. All sorts of activities taking place. And you, in that dream, have believed in character in the dream, is taking place in it. It's all happening to you. You wake up in the morning, where does it all go? It disappears because it was a dream. You look into it, you realise that dream character hadn't moved off the bed. No words had come out of its mouth. Yet there were words coming out of its mouth, all sorts of activities going. And where's the shopping mall that you're in, or whatever you were in, or the car, or the house? It all disappeared. Gone. Well, what you don't realise is that when you wake up into this living dream. Because this dream starts where the dream at night comes into the dream when you're asleep and it disappears when you wake up. This dream starts when you wake up because you're merely in the room and things start to happen and continues on throughout the seeming day. All sorts of things happen, and when you wake up from the night before into this dream, they're still there next morning, not like the dream when they disappear. They're still there and it carries on from where it left off. And Nisargadatta tells you that. He says, realise you're dreaming a dream you call the world. Stop looking for ways out. The dream is not your concern, but we've made it our concern, haven't we? Your concern is you love one part of the dream and not the other. And that's so we're trying to get out of this dream we don't like and live the waking dream. Dream is not your concern. Dream is you love one part and not the other. He says love all of it or none of it. Don't separate it. Leave it as it is. And when you look at your thoughts and see the way thought functions, as Shakespeare told you, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And realise that that's how thoughts vibrate, good, bad, pleasant, painful, happy, sad, loving, hating, positive, negative. And we want the good and we don't want the bad. We love one part of it and not the other. But he says love all of it or none of it. Realising it's a dream, the rest will be done for you. And that's a fact. If you haven't had a taste of it yet, that's a fact. Your life plays out of itself. Life's like it played out and functioned for the first couple of years of your life when you didn't have any words. So it'll come up in your life what to do. As Einstein tells you, he said, I worked on this problem for weeks and weeks, trying to work it out what it was. Came to no conclusion. But he said, one night I went to sleep and next morning when I woke up it was there. Left as it is and got all the chatter out of the road, it will unfold. And it does. because out of life that more life comes, and realise it's happened all along. From the time you're a little baby, a young boy or girl, into a youth or a teenager, into middle age and old age, no matter what we thought, felt or did, it's still carried on. And it's carrying on right now. But how often have we put the stoppers on it? Oh, I don't want this. It should be like that. And gone into the conflict, the mental conflict that's caused all the disturbance, all the fear and anger and depression. Not realising that left as it is, just like it's happening right now, your heart's beating, you're breathing, hair and fingernails growing, food's being digested, without you doing a thing about it as the person. It's happening. It's unfolding. And left as it is, it's got a better chance of functioning as it should, rather than as we think it should. Trying to alter it, modify it and correct it. No wonder we get into trouble, because we don't get a full insight into it. We get this partial potential that I know what to do. And of course we fall into the trap. And as Wei Wu Wei said a couple of thousand years ago, whatever it was, he says, why are you unhappy? Because everything you say, everything you do, and everything you think is for yourself. And he says there isn't one. So we're thinking these things and believing them, but there isn't one to take it on board. So the thing that's taking on board is the fictional belief in the me. If you're not relating to that, see how life is. Test it out. And that's what needs to happen. It was with me until I eventually heard it and tested it out. And even in the seeing through it was immediate, but the gradual dropping away of all the habitual patterns takes time. And there's still some parts of it come up in time, but it doesn't last now, because the scriptural saying, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Don't just sing it, but know it. And that's what Christ told you. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the light. He wasn't talking about himself. He was talking about that sense of presence that translates as the thought I am. That's what I am, is that awareness of presence, the knowing that you are, that translates into thoughts, feelings and emotions. That's where the freedom, peace and joy is. We hear about peace of mind, and we think we've got to get peace of mind. But when you look into it, you realise the mind can never be at peace. The very nature of the mind is to think, is to vibrate into words, thoughts, ideas and images. So when you are recognising you are prior to the thought, prior to the word, you've had a taste of that for the first couple of years of your life when you had no words. You were living spontaneously and naturally. It's where you can't remember your birth. And now through that life, throughout the time you've been here, you've had tastes of it when everything's fallen into place. You had moments when it was good, joyful, happy. Then the concept started up again and you're back into the trap. And that's what they tell you, be as you are, not as you appear to be. And what am I? Well, I am that. That is all. If that is all there is, I must be that. And innately you know that because you say, that's the chair I'm sitting in, and that's the carpet on the floor, that's the room I'm in. You know what it is already, but you're putting a label, room, chair or space, but it's that. It's not separate. The chair is not separate from the floor or the space or me, you or me or anything. It's all that. But we believe it is. And that belief has become ingrained because we reinforce it every day. So you've got to keep recognising the truth, know the truth, till you stabilise it. Stabilise it and you know for certain that you are that. Test it out and see. That's what you need to do. And some of you here, I know, are recognising it already. So it's not something that's just for the few. They were extremely taken on board and pointed out that because we didn't have the means of communication we've got now, people say, oh, it's only for the few. It's not. It's everybody's birthright. It's what everybody is. You can stay in the sense of separation if you want, or you can question and investigate and know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Because I tell you, the false cannot stand up to investigation. And that peace of mind, you'll never get peace of mind. Because have a look. Is that mind ever at peace? It's always looking at this or looking into that, or questioning this or questioning that. And they tell you that. They call it the peace that passes all understanding. And what does that mean? That means it's no use to try and grasp it or understand it. That means the peace is when the mind is not. It doesn't have to be understood then because it's prior to the mind, it's prior to the understanding. And you know you're prior to the mind because you don't remember your birth for the first coming. But we've lost sight of it. So that's what we point out to, and that's what you'd ask to investigate and look at. And if it resonates with you, something resonates and is recognised, you'll do it. It touches you. And it's recognised by that innate intelligence that you already are. It's saying that there's got to be more to it than this. That's why you start looking in another direction. You're not happy with the way it's going. Not realising there is more, but the sense of presence comes upon you and reveals to you. There is more to life than what appears in the everyday functioning. And you are that life. So that's what we point to. And Kat, where are you?
Thank you, sweetheart. You're right. Thank you. And you got your ears, Bob. Bob, your ears.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the part when we all interact and we all have say. And we can start from a little conversation we had from our online community, where the question was from Tanya. Oops, I actually lost it somewhere. Yeah, it only shows a little fragment. I'll just have to refer it. She had a question of how to actually keep remembering and not engaging Tanya, not engaging with the story. When she sits down, she still feels the tension in the body and the story going. And Martin was answering her to actually give herself a permission to relax.
Yes. As soon as you feed the tension and lock into it, you've got to start a story about what the tension is.
Yeah.
Just relaxing.
So Martin says, take this moment to be and relax into it.
Leave it as it is, unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected. And it changes by itself.
Yes. And Tanya says, thank you, Martin. Seem to need the permission to relax. This pointer really made me smile, and a bit of relaxation of that tension in the chest. And we'll have to sit and look again at this with eyes closed. There's still a tension in the chest and racing heart. And the story, of course. Well, it is no concept. What could you say?
Well, if she's seeing a tension in the street, in the chest,
Yes.
what must it be? It's an object.
Yeah.
Who's the subject that's looking at it?
Mm.
Have a look at that and see that it's objective. Not looking. See it as it is, as an object. It's not you. You don't have to look into it anymore, or leave it there. Leave it settle of itself, and it will. But when you look at things, there's no object at all. It's all the one essence.
Yes, actually, I commented on that one. Listen with your heart. Every pointer can bring about the awareness of relaxation from which you know the tension. So it's roughly the same thing.
Yeah.
When you're noticing the tension or you're noticing the thinking, that noticing comes from its opposite. You can't see tension from tension because there is no distinction. The perception doesn't work this way. So there is always a place in you which, when you are aware of turmoil or aware of stress, that awareness comes from the point of clear seeing.
Yes, and you say from the heart. The heart is not seeing from the thought. It's seeing from the pure life essence that you are, spirit.
Well, another reason why I actually put that one, and I hope, Tanya, you will understand. Bob was throwing at us 45 minutes of magnificent pointers with which every single one could actually bring you back home. And there was a like this correspondence going in behind. Obviously, we, as much as we want to believe we're multitasking, no, we're not. If you are focused on writing your questions and answering questions, you obviously defocused from listening to Bob. And I wanted to highlight how important it is to really not, you can say, oh yeah, I heard it before, he says the same thing, I heard it, say it differently. No, it's not about saying it differently, it's about hearing it differently. It can actually be heard differently. And I'm speaking from experience, because when I came first few times listening to Bob, I also had that commentary, yeah, right, I heard it before. But there is another way to hear it, and that another way is, like Bob is saying, really resonating from the depth of your heart. Because then, every word, every sentence that he points out, and he's speaking from that razor's edge of clear seeing, that resonance can blow your mind and evoke that absolute silence and clarity from which all the thinking, all the tensions and everything is seen, just as he said, as an object in awareness. But you are that open field of awareness. There is a possibility to hear things in this way, with the resonating, not hearing like, yeah, I know, say it differently. So it gets my mind a little bit more of a liking, because that one always wants something new, something to chew on, something interesting, something logical, something fun. And you hear the same thing and, I know it. No, you don't. The eye that thinks it knows it is a cloud on the sky. That eye that thinks that gets it or understands it or is enlightened is a thought, is a mental construct, is a nonsense. The clear seeing, there is no I in it. In a clear seeing, there is no one claiming that seeing. And that's the ultimate freedom. Nothing needs to be known, understood, grasped, chewed on. That's the freedom, just being comfortable with mystery of life as it shows up. And Tanya was also, I remember her question was about not knowing what she can do, about her daughter or about the job or about anything, and finding comfort in that not knowing. is the space in which that intuitive knowing can come up as an action thought. And if it doesn't, that intuitive knowing may come up as start a research or ask someone who does know, or maybe nothing needs to be done. And there is another. Tanya says, looks like I don't have to go just yet, but we'll try listening with my heart. Oh yes, Tanya was saying that she had to go. Oh, lovely. Yes. And we had a couple of good morning messages, and apart from that conversation, that is it. So now the mic goes to you, and please share us what you heard, perhaps, from what Bob said, what you heard fresh and new, or maybe what you struggle with, or what comes up, if anything.
So originally when I used to listen to pointers, there's been a shift in how I listen to them. And what I realised was that there was still a part of me that was listening to pointers as if I was trying to search for something in my experience to find awareness as an objective thing. And so it's like the pointers are pointing to something which I think awareness is. And it was like when I was listening, there was like a search going on in my mind to find that something. Whereas the shift is like, it's actually like a letting go of trying to look. And it's the words are arising from that space. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
more of a comment there.
That's clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I find it so wonderfully simple, you know. Everything that you say ultimately comes back for me to to the understanding that the appearances are nothing but the content within the context. We are the context. And the content is the appearance of events and shapes. But they're actually the manifestations of what actually can appear, but only because there is a context that can hold them. And I find that everything is actually that. It's the content that is the content of reality.
Yeah.
And the reality is the context which we are. So everything comes back to that, actually, over and over and over. Right?
Yes, it's all the content of space.
That's right.
All the content of space.
Yes, of course.
Yes, Marika calls it context. The space, you can call it context, you can call it love, you can call it whatever. You can call it God.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
You can call it context, or you can call it whatever.
Pure awareness.
Yeah.
It's pure awareness, yes. Right.
Only that.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, everything comes back to that, and we just tend to confuse the content so much with the context, and the context with the content. And it's a very simple reality, actually, to see us as the container, but not what is it contained. Right? Yeah. It's. I think the whole thing, waking up to that is, and being that actually is an incredibly simple thing, but getting to the simplicity is what has been difficult. That is the difficulty.
Beautiful. And you can also, I like the way you say it, you know, you see yourself as a container, and everything that it contains is in the container. And then you can also see that container, it has no boundaries. And you can also see that the content, like Bob says, is also is also empty in a way, because it kind of, and it's a fantastic pointer to see the duality, because it appears as duality. It appears as space and objects as silence and sounds. That's the appearance. It will always appear dualistically. But in its essence, that duality, that form in emptiness, they collapse into one, because it's like Bob was alluding to a dream. The dream feels like full of forms, but it really is just a mirage, just a mental image, just the construct of the...
And it's waking to the dream.
Awakening to the dream, yes. And you wake up to the duality of manifestation, understanding that it, in essence, that's not two. It is all one. It's
the content is merely the expression of the of context. It's expression, nothing else. But it's a relevant expression.
And we have Catherine says, grateful for that life intelligence or God which gives you to the impetus to us, the audience, the great pointers, to free us all. Love forever, James and Catherine. Lots of love to two of you. Anyone? Come on, Cole. Give us a burst. No? Yes, someone else, Nat says, yes, I too am very grateful for the two of you. And we are also grateful for the whole community, because there is not two, there is only one reflection in many different forms and shapes. And thank you, Nat. Peter, would you like to say something?
Something. Just thinking that there's no other. There's no in there being no other. There's no you. No I. No separate I. No separate you. It's just this resonant field that we're all in. Like when I look at Cole there, you know, is there a different person there? Not really, not in essence, you know, we're joined, aren't we? Just that one thing, it's completely inexplicable. I don't know how to explain that. Totally not understandable at all. But as soon as we come to that place, the better, I think. And just recognise the obvious heartfelt oneness that we all are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to share, obviously, what you said with regards to the years of seeking and the book reading and all that stuff. Just saying, it was Hannah? Yeah, what Hannah said with regards to this kind of inward-facing kind of journey that takes after you've asked all the mind questions, and you just years reading on that, and obviously all the podcasts and satsangs and all that stuff, and just to come back just to the fact of that non-conceptual awareness. It's very freeing, but there's the word. It's always that. It does take time, and it feels like that is a journey that needs to be taken to stop that from happening, and then understanding that it is non-conceptual, and you have to stay there. And just I've realised a lot of the unborn Buddha mind that I love, the Bankei. Just things just happen, and just let them happen. You can be stressing about a problem, and then you realise that there's some kind of resistance there, and then you just work it out right away. You can be half an hour, have a cup of tea, and you've already fixed it, and it's beautiful. And what you said before, and even synchronicity, saying lots of words now. My son this morning, I took him swimming, and he said, "Hey, I'd love to go to space with you one day." And I said, "You're already in space." And then for you to say that today, my mind just completely blew. This is beautiful. It's so true. Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
Josh.
Also in relation to what Hannah was saying, it feels like resonance happens more through the body than through the mind so much. Like if you're thinking about, it can maybe happen in the mind as well in terms of a pointer, but kind of resting in the presence of where you are right now or whatever. At least in my experience, I find that can, what's being said has some deeper effect or something. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think the point of confusion that happened for me was that there was a subtle thought that I was trying to achieve a state of mind. Yeah. And I would use practices to get myself to a state of mind. And which I thought was awareness, which is like maybe a sense of peace or like things that, better or something like that. But then there was a seeing that like awareness is not a state of mind.
Beautiful.
It's beyond any state of mind.
Yes.
And you can't get to it through trying to change your state of mind. Yeah.
That is really, really great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hope everybody heard that, because it is really important to hear that. Initially we have ideas of what the clarity, of what awakening, of what enlightenment is. And it feels like, oh yeah, I will never get angry, I'll be experiencing bliss. There is a place where I have to get. But there is no I and there is no place. It isn't a state of mind. It is just really seeing whether the mind is clear or clean or chatty or trained or untrained or whatever, ADHD, whatever the mind is. When you see the mind clearly, you're already looking from beyond the mind, from that non-conceptual awareness. And that's the freedom. Nothing needs to change, nothing needs to be fixed. And what Danny was saying, yes, it seems like a journey, because initially the only tool you seem to have is the mind. So you listen with your mind. And as the message penetrates to that thick layer of interpretation, which we give to every word, we don't really do it. It's just a habit, it's just a software, it's a program. That thing interprets everything it hears and relates it to the map of reality that we already have made. So sometimes the hearing has to repeatedly dig the hole, like really wash off the layers of interpretation before it really hits home. Like, oh shit, it was much, much, much simpler than I ever thought. Because thinking of the pointer, and you interpret the pointer and you add to it and you dig it. No, it really is so literal and it's so simple. Non-conceptual awareness. There is no concepts. You don't have to understand it with the concepts. You can't think what it is. Thinking moves you away. It is, but to find that simplicity, it may appear, in some cases it is instantaneous, but it may appear that the layers of conceptual thinking has to be really penetrated deeply before it reaches the heart.
It's hard, isn't it? There's cables everywhere. I just wanted to share a story. I actually laugh about this now. For the past year, I've been trying to figure out why there's no difference between me and an object and how we're all one. And I've been staring at plants and trees and everything for a long time. And just to realize after a year of just staring, it's like, hang on, it'll never happen. Because it's kind of rose-tinted glasses. It's always going to be that duality. Yeah. I find it really funny now, actually. It's amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you quit trying.
Yeah.
I sometimes hear people coming to the meeting that they get really passionate. Oh, I'm getting, yes, I understand it. This plastic bag and we are one. Yes. And sometimes I don't even have heart to ask that question, but it just is only fair towards everyone else. Well, is that your direct experience right at this moment, or is it a concept? Because if you were a plastic bag and you fully experience it, well, okay, congratulations. I haven't been there. You obviously got something bigger and greater than Bob and I. You should, yeah. But the truth is, trying to follow those concepts, ideas of what the oneness is, or what the cosmic union is, takes you bananas, deeper into a dream. It is not necessary. Like if you look at the natural world, you look at the cats and dogs and birds and trees, how their perception changes, or how their perception is different, so they cannot navigate the world. Nonsense. It is a wrong expectation. It's again another vagary of the imagining mind. But yes, we have to go there, we have to try it, we have to exhaust it. Oh, it seems to be this way. Not everyone, but it seems to be this way. I have a comment from Adrian. He usually has a good comments. He says that initial belief in the separate me from the early age can be seen as an idea that was added onto what already is, and thinking it is running the show and alive. It is a belief that can be challenged like any other belief. It's like a story that has been written onto the paper, and the ink on the paper is taken to be me. But it is a story of me, not actually what I am. Beautiful. Yeah, I heard that analogy before about the ink or the writing in the paper. Is really, really good analogy. Or the film on the screen, the movie on the screen. Beautiful, thank you. It can totally be challenged, the conceptual image that we've learned to believe that is who we are. And Ram says, the so-called state of mind is an appearance in awareness. As Bob would say, are you unaware right now? Yeah, absolutely, great point. And British Julia says, mind struggles with oneness, just relax. Absolutely. That's where non-conceptual awareness doesn't have the concept of separation. It doesn't have any other concept. So that's how you get there. Just relax. Thank you, Julia. And Sally says, I'm noticing the pressure coming up that I should be meditating, doing yoga, being creative, etc. The idea that these things are needed, and the idea that they are tools to grow and develop. Those ideas seems to be based on past experiences of self-inquiry that has led me to non-duality. Well, yes, there is a lot of ideas. And see how and what the body does if you are completely free from believing those ideas. Because it does not mean that you will stop sitting in silence. It does not mean that you will stop developing your skills or expressing creatively. Nothing needs to be sacrificed. Only the narrative, the obsession I have to, which as you notice creates tension. It creates sense of inadequacy, sense of I'm not good enough, I have to do more, all that I gets intensified. This is unnecessary. Action happen, they will continue to happen, but from different place, from the place of freedom and joy of expression, rather than sense of necessity. And, well, I know where that sense comes from, that Nisargadatta has the word for it, earnestness, like really strong commitment. I want to see through, I'm so committed, I love the truth, I love the ideas. That is the dualistic idea that often propels the search, and it often facilitates the crisis which may flip the coin. But it's simply not necessary, and it causes suffering. Yes?
Just wondering, the oneness, knowing the oneness, how would that actually make fear go away?
You want to answer that? How knowing the oneness makes fear go away?
What I mean is, I've been looking into this oneness, and just because we're one, how does that make any difference?
Well, if you're not, who or what can you fear if you're not separate from it? Do you fear yourself? Any fear there in yourself? Only when there's something else there that it's either good or bad. But thought, feeling, emotion come up. Thought will come up. And leave it there a little while, it becomes the feeling. It might be fear, it might be anger or whatever. But then once it's come up, then it's become the object, which you put the lower label on the fear or sensation. And when that sensation gets into the body, it upsets the physical, causes the blood pressure to rise, the heart to beat fast, and all these things. But without any thought, there won't be. The fear won't be there. There might be a sensation come up, which will be responded to at the time, but not believing in it and let it grow and get worse. But nothing, no thing, unless it's believed in, will come up and cause a problem. What's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? You say there's fear there, anything, happiness, sadness, anything at all without a thought. Have a look and investigate. It's only me and the other, the belief in me and the other sense of separation, that can cause any of the psychological problems.
So to follow up on that, so the understanding that there's no separation, why would one have less fear knowing that than if there is separation? What's the difference? If there's duality or non-duality, what's the actual difference? Just because I'm one with everything, why is it that separation would cause fear, and why would oneness make that go away?
Well, because it's not recognised. We're living in the belief that we are separate. That's what's causing it. If it's just as it is, unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected, it changes by itself naturally. The sense of separation is duality. And it's not two, there is no such thing as two. But it patterns dualistically. Day and night, winter, summer, silence and sound, thinker and thought. But it's only because they're believed to be separate. And we want like one and don't want the other. If you leave it as it is, unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected, just like in nature, day and night. Right here, the sun, the earth is facing the sun, and the P is daylight. At the other end of the earth, it's facing away from the sun. It's dark. Does the earth know anything about daylight or dark? Does the sun, the light itself, know anything about light or darkness? It doesn't. It's still the one essence expressing in both ways. We divide with the sense of separation, and it's the division that is the problem.
So why would division or separation, why does that cause the problems? Like, what is it about it that actually...
When a little child starts to reason, his parents tell him, "You're little Johnny," and he reasons, "I am little Johnny." And he looks out there, he sees something out there that he hasn't learnt any words of, and he reasons, "That's not me, that's not little Johnny." So he's uncertain about it. And in that uncertainty comes, fear and rejection or whatever, because he's not sure what it is. If you're not sure of something, you're certainly not going to jump into it, are you?
Also, fear can only be in relation to something else. So you can only have fear if it's in relation to something else, which is duality.
Yeah.
So that's the simplicity of it. So it can only be in relation without relating it to something else.
So it's relative.
Can there be fear or anything, anxiety, whatever? It's always in relationship that would appear.
I mean, there might be a moment of fear. Like I might be able to go, boom, and scare you and jump out and you'd be like, I mean, a bird can get scared, right? But they don't have a concept about it, and they go back 2 seconds later and they're back to eating the food or whatever after you scared them off, right? I think the difference between, I could be wrong.
But it's simple, just dualism is relationship. Those things exist in...
I'm still talking.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh.
That's okay.
Sorry, Jim.
The toddler doesn't hold a grudge. I've never seen one. We got one in the room here. They get upset, but they don't stay angry. Okay, I think is the thinking, is the I that we're buying into, and that's not bought into yet until we start to be about that kid's age that was here, about 2 and a half, that we start to buy into this idea. And so there's a moment, I bet, if somebody were to run up to Bob with a knife, he might go, but he won't be holding on to it tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? So the suffering, I think that the fear that we're talking about, it's not that you won't ever feel sadness again, or even, I have seen him get a little bit pissed. It happened, but it's not held on to. And I think that's the liberation is when it's like, yes, they're seeing that this whole thing has been existing only in thinking, this whole dream. And then when that's seen as just a thought, it's not taken so personal. And when the personal is removed, everything is back to here. And the stories, they can happen or whatever, but they're not bought into as much. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if What? Okay, let's come.
One thing that occurs that actually related to several things several people said was like reason analysis. It's just occurring that reason and analysis always have a subject-object. They always have a good and bad. It always has right and wrong. It always has separation associated with it, and for no reason. Like, there are so many things here that are unsayable and unknowable, and just the occurrence of for no reason. And then when Bob says unmodified, unaltered, uncorrected, that things spontaneously shift in some way or another, where things become clear. But yeah, the reason thing seems so overrated right now. I mean, it's just funny that way.
Hannah.
So just on the question about like the oneness and separation, I think it's when you take yourself to be the separate self, then you believe the story that like you're separate from experience, and then experience can impact you and can be a threat to your survival. Mm-hmm. When you see from the place of oneness, then you understand that oneness contains all experience, but is actually not ever touched by experience. So there's a place that can experience fear where the character dies or something like that, the apparent life dies or goes through pain or whatnot, but it's actually never touched by that. So there is actually no threat to the survival of that oneness. So there can't be fear in that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Impersonal.
Yeah, it might be a slightly different slant, but you know, you get up in the morning and you feel uncomfortable, and then you feel thirsty, and then you feel you feel lonely, and you talk to somebody, and then something happens, and you go out. Maybe you go out and do a skydive, and you feel fear, and you feel terror, and somebody says to you, "Let go," and you look at your hands, and they won't let go, and then all of a sudden you're falling, and then there's ecstasy, and then there's hunger again, and then it gets round to about sleep time, and you go to sleep, and then you get up the next day, and the same thing happens again. And these are all just things that happen, or seem to happen. So where's the separation?
That's great.
Beautiful. It's just idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very mysterious, this oneness, this non-duality, because we live in a world which appears, as Bob has said, as the appearance of duality, and we're always, whenever we're in the mind, we're actually in duality, because the mind is for survival, trying to work out and divide things, understand things, label things. It needs to label things. And then there's this concept of oneness and no labels that Bob talks about, which frees you from the mind's paranoia and fear. Yet it can be very difficult, as we all know, to metamorphosize into being that oneness. And so that's what I struggle with, that I've conceptually understood oneness for a long time, but actually living it or being it, or it's very, very, very difficult for me personally.
You don't have to do anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to do anything.
Don't have to do anything.
10 minutes.
Good answer.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes to the end of the meeting. But I love the discussion, I love the question, and that is really great question. What's the fine distinction? And I wonder if you could actually relate to the example that I know from my own life. I used to believe fanatically that the thought, I'm not good enough, is the truth. I thought it was the reality. That was me who was not good enough. The thought was in my head. It was my thought. It was personal. And the consequences of believing that thought was suffering, struggle, social anxiety, a lot of consequences. Now the same thought comes to the mind. If there is any response to that thought at all, it would be a laughter. Because what a ridiculous idea. I mean, it's just an idea. It has absolutely it can't touch the essence of space or awareness. But believing to be the image, believing to be a person, and believing that those thoughts about me are real, they are truth, that they're in my head, they're my thoughts, this is the truth. That is suffering, that is separation. And in meantime, those thoughts, the exactly same content of the thinking may be happening. But if those thoughts are not taken seriously and not being believed, they are known for what they truly are. They're just vibrations in the awareness. They're just line of text. Depends how different minds process thoughts differently. Some hear the sound, some see the lines. Doesn't matter, but they're just content. And they're not always there. That can't be true. No thought can ever be true. No thought about me. I can say I'm a woman. Since I was born, I was always a woman. No, I wasn't. I was a little baby or a girl. And even not that, because the body was little baby or a girl. Body is my vehicle. Body is the costume that awareness needs to see, otherwise it is blind. It needs the eyes, ears. So whatever happens to the body, whatever feelings happen to the body, whatever stories happen to the body, body and its software, of course, body is the hardware, software is the mind. Whatever happens to that vehicle of experience and expression doesn't happen to the awareness, to that open field of conscious knowing. There is a knowing of the body-mind. So I cannot be the body-mind because the I can't see itself. So, and you know it conceptually, but it is really, really good to pin it down to the practical example in which you can actually relate, yes, well, I believe that the earth is flat, or I believe the Santa is real, or I believe that there is a me that is real, and that me has to be transcended. Well, that me can't be transcended because it isn't real. And if I am the one that needs to transcend the me, that's never going to happen. It's like Bob sometimes quotes Banki. Getting rid of the ego is like washing away blood with blood. Still blood remains. You get rid of the ego, you kill the ego. Who killed the ego and who is left? So it really is about the recognition, simple recognition, that this Santa Claus isn't real, it has never been real. The me, the idea that I'm worthy, unworthy, woman, Australian, Polish, that's just a set bundle of concepts, habitually believed completely innocently. Because everybody else, mama, daddy, everyone, teachers, religious gurus, prime ministers, they assume that to be a reality. So of course it's total innocence about believing that. But the invitation is to question and see those concepts for what they are. They just costume, they handy. Yes, Marika?
Yeah, I totally see it your way. I totally agree with that, absolutely. And what actually happened experientially is that, and I'd love to answer that question to you, because it's actually effortless. That concept, that conceptual mind, in time, in its own time, with sincerity and earnestness, dissolves. It just dissolves. There is there's no effort in it. It just dissolves. But what happens is that actually, what happens then is dramatic, and that's what I'd like to respond to when you ask, what is the difference when you understand oneness and live in the oneness? Does that affect fear? It affects everything dramatically. Absolutely dramatically, because what actually happens in the process of that dissolution is that what arises out of that dissolution is that you have compassion, empathy, and unconditional sympathy, and ultimately a goodwill for all and for everything. And there is no fear left. And that is the natural response, because this comes from the heart and no longer from an interfering, discursive mind. It makes all the difference in the world, and it happens by dissolving. That's my experience.
Beautiful.
I've got a funny question, but it's kind of what happens next. It's like, because, like I think I'm a mother. I had a grandfather who said, you'll always be taken care of. I've got all these ideas and precepts. I've lived in a certain place. Now, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'd like it to be, but this is, I'd like...
Who wants to know?
Well, I'd like to do what's wise, but, does it matter where I live? But it appears to matter. Like I saw the emotion and sadness, the love that my, grandparents, worked so hard for, a place, so much love and probably suffering. But that's the question, how do you know what to do next when you have a lot of options? but it appears...
when you see you're acting.
Then
you know.
What is next?
Sorry?
What is next?
I don't know.
What does it mean? A future, right?
Yeah.
Divorcing this moment now and putting your heart into something that doesn't exist. I know it is again anxiety. It is a program in the mind that tells you, no, you gotta look, you gotta get prepared, you gotta plan, you gotta do this. You know, you gotta protect that body mind. You gotta negotiate the best conditions for it. But we tend to overdo it. When you don't have enough data for the decision to arise, wait for the enough data, and meantime, fully live this moment. Fully live. Don't miss out on the sounds, sights, taste, flavors, fragrances. Immerse yourself in that happy natural state, because then you ground that joyful love for being. And from that place, when there is enough data, decision will arise, and you will know where you're going when you see your feet going. And this takes a courage for that conditioned personality to take a leap of faith and throw yourself into the care of life. Like Bob sometimes quotes Jesus, looking at the birds and the lilies in the field. They don't know. Solomon in their glory wouldn't dress like them. The Father, how you say it? Because I don't know that quote. Father provides. Father, the consciousness, the light, the sky.
Knows you have need of these things. And it's your Father's good pleasure to give you things. So they come about themselves. Not Big Daddy in the sky.
The sky, not the daddy, but the sky.
But
and
there isn't.
The data will come.
Now have a look at the concept of time. Is there a past if you don't think about it? No past if you don't think. How can there be a next?
Yeah. No future if you don't think about it.
But I'm still going to do something, it appears.
You're still breathing, heart's still beating, thoughts are coming up, it's happening. That's all next, or was going to be next. It's now that's past. So it just leaves you present. Still aware, still knowing that you are. And that presence is spontaneous. It's transient.
When the decision is right, it will present itself in the field of awareness. Because what we tend to do, and this was my predominant option, my predominant sort of a personality trait, option orientations. Always a lot of options and a lot of speculating what's going to be more pleasant, more fulfilling, and so on and so forth. And wasting the time in living in the imaginary world of options, where there was at the moment absolutely nothing to do, because there wasn't enough of information of what to do. So this is the moment to actually come back to the reality.
I'm not so much of a planner, so it's hard for me to plan, you know.
Lovely, because animals are not much of the planners either. And see, the squirrels know where to hide the nuts, to plant the forest for future generations. They forget where to plant it. So. And the bears, they know to eat enough salmons to hibernate for 6 months. The nature gives us those capacities that when they are needed, they will surface. And if some capacities are missed, and some animals get concussions and the brain doesn't function, well, that particular body will die. But the consciousness doesn't die. The life doesn't die. It will show up different through different channels.
As a rule, a man's a fool. When it's hot, he wants it cool. When it's cool, he wants it hot. Always wanting what is not. Never wanting what he's got. As a rule, a man's a fool.
Is time? Yeah, I have a couple of comments also from our online community. British Julia says it was the sharing of Sally about meditation. She says, I felt the urge to meditate recently after years. It was lovely, with no notion of trying to achieve anything. Great point about practicing. No agenda, no notion of individual to get somewhere or get something. Beautiful. Thank you for reminder, Julia. And JB says, life and death, peace and fear, etc. are dualistic, but what is one has no division and no conflict or concepts. Oneness isn't personal, but duality, me and my life, appears like there is a me trying to remain safe. in control, etc. That's it. That's the appearance of duality. That's the sense of separation. Thank you, JB. And thank you, JB says, thank you, Bob and Kat, for streaming Sunday mornings for us. And Bill says, so blissful, insightful sharing. And thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.